And I have two brutal stories for you today that get progressively worse. The first is about a kid who was born a monster, and the second was about a man who had anger issues with the world, the entire world. Do me a favor, smack that subscribe button, punch that notification button, and also kick the like button for me. Katano Gordino was born in 1896 in the country of Argentina. He was one of 8 siblings that were all boys. His father and mother, Fiora and Lucia, were abusive to their children. Gordino's father transmitted syphilis to his wife during her pregnancy with Gordino. This is believed to have caused future health problems and psychological issues for young Gordino. Gordino had huge ears as a child and was short for his age, so he was nicknamed the big-eared midget. As a small child, Gordino had a small problem that he couldn't escape from. That small problem was that he regularly killed cats and birds, and he also enjoyed playing with fire. Now, that doesn't sound like crazy to me at all. His violent behavior and lack of interest in education caused him to be removed from several schools. When he was 7 years old, Gordino beat a 2-year-old boy by the name of Miguel and threw him in a ditch. This attack was stopped by a witness. A year later, at age 8, Gordino beat a toddler by the name of Anna that lived in his neighborhood with a stone. A police officer stopped this attack, arrested him, and later released him due to his age. A year after that attack, Gordino killed a small child by the name of Maria, who was only 3 years old. Test question. I wonder where the parents of the 3-year-old would be during her murder. This was his first murder, which went unnoticed and would only be discovered years later during his incarceration. When he was eventually captured, he confessed that in 1906, he took a girl about 3 years old to the wasteland on Rio de Janeiro Street, where he attempted to strangle her. Then he buried her alive in a ditch, which he covered with cans. The authorities, upon learning of this crime, investigated the site but found that a 2-story house had been constructed over the grave. A missing persons complaint was found from March of 1906 with a 3-year-old girl that was missing by the name of Maria. The missing girl's body was never found. When he was 10, Gordino's parents discovered his compulsive masturbation. His mother told the police, resulting in a 2-month jail sentence for him because masturbation was considered a crime. But beating kids and throwing kids in the ditch wasn't a crime at all, I guess. You can't make this stuff up. In January of 1912, Arturo, a 13-year-old, was found dead in an abandoned house. Gordino was alleged to have been the murderer. At the time, there was not enough evidence to link the victim to anyone. A month and a half later, in March of 1912, Gordino set the dress of a 5-year-old girl by the name of Reina on fire, who didn't recover and died a few days later. In November of 1912, he tried to choke an 8-year-old boy by the name of Roberto. He was arrested and charged with attempted murder, but was released until trial. They keep letting this guy out. Only 8 days later, he assaulted a 3-year-old by the name of Carmen, who suffered minor wounds before a police officer intervened and Gordino ran off. Somebody, please, this guy must be stopped. Now, 4 days after that last assault, he kidnapped a 2-year-old boy by the name of Carolina, who cried out and was rescued by a neighbor. This guy was a little terror. 14 days later, after that attack, Gordino saw a 3-year-old boy by the name of Gordano playing outside his house and offered to buy the boy some sweets to convince him to go with him. Gordino took the child to a country house. When they were inside, he threw him on the floor and unsuccessfully tried to choke him with his belt. Then he cut the belt and tied the boy's hands and legs together. He started beating the child and considering hammering his head. He left the house looking for a nail and saw Gordino's father searching for the child. Gordino then re-entered the house with a nail and hammer, and he hammered the nail into the skull of the kid's head. The body was found minutes later by his father. Gordino went to the wake and touched the skull where he had fixed the nail in his head. At 5:30 in the morning in December of 1912, he was arrested by the police, confessing to his crimes. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, and where he remained until he died in 1944. Good riddance. Lon John Balaban was born in 1924 in Romania. He was known to his community for having an extremely bad temper. His trigger for his bouts of rage would take place whenever he became rejected by women. Balaban fled Romania for France in 1941. February 1948, then 24 years old, Balaban murdered a Hungarian woman by the name of Rewa in Paris. His first recorded murder earned him the name of the Romanian Maniac. Not long after the murder, he then fled to Australia. This was in July of 1951. Not long after the murder, he then fled to Australia in July of 1951 and held several odd and end jobs until he found stable work as an industrial chemist. In 1952, he met and married a 30-year-old woman by the name of Thelma Joyce Cadd. Lived with her 6-year-old son Philip and her mother, which was a 66-year-old woman by the name of Susan. In December, a 29-year-old by the name of Zora Kusek was murdered at her shack in Torrensville. She was found completely mutilated by a resident of a nearby boarding house. Kusek's head was severed with a pocket knife by the attacker. The knife was left at the scene in a blood-stained dish of water near the bed. The killer was like, "Here's your knife back." The police believed that the victim knew and met the killer at a hotel or wine bar before leading the killer to her residence. Both the South Australian and immigrant community was appalled by the severity of the crime, aided by the police in leading them to Balaban. A taxicab driver recalled driving the woman and man resembling Balaban on that very night. Balaban was arrested. During questioning, he gave inconsistent recounts of his whereabouts to authorities. He was charged, went to trial, but was ultimately released due to lack of evidence. After the trial, Balaban returned to his family in February of 1953. Over time, Balaban became unhappy with his marriage. In April of 1953, Balaban left his family to go drinking. While out, he became drunk and went into one of his fits of rage, then attacked several random people outside the local bar with an iron bar, one of which was a lady at a public toilet along with several other people. He sent several people to the hospital with serious head injuries. What, did they all just stand around and watch him bonk people over the head? Still engrossed with anger, Balaban returned home and grabbed a claw hammer. He first turned towards his wife Thelma, who was sleeping in the main bedroom, and killed her. Then he moved to the other bedroom where the 7-year-old Philip and his grandmother Susan were resting, and brutally killed both of them. Finally, Balaban attacked a 24-year-old woman by the name of Verna Manic, a waitress who rented and lived on their balcony. The woman fought back, breaking the room's lamp and smearing the walls with blood in the process. In an attempt to save her own life, Verna leapt out of the first-story window, landing on the pavement and falling unconscious. Frightened by the sudden screaming, neighbors quickly called the police, who promptly arrived and saw Verna lying on the pavement. They arrested Balaban. While in jail, Balaban confessed to the murder of his wife, stepson, and mother-in-law, claiming that his family deserved to die because his wife had acted like a prostitute, and he was very much against prostitutes. Can't make this stuff up. During the interview, he also admitted to strangling of the 29-year-old by the name of Zora because she was a prostitute. Balaban also confessed to strangling the woman Rena in Paris before migrating to Australia. The court quickly sentenced him to death for Zora's murder. In August of 1953, he was hung by the neck until he was dead. I hope you enjoyed these stories. If so, hit the like button, punch the subscribe button, and smack the notification button in the face so you can get reminded of new content 3 times a week. God bless you and stay safe.